So first things first, the Steelers are all in on 2025. Look, it is an improved roster from 2024. I don't even see, and I said this, I'm not sure that any sane person that follows the Pittsburgh Steelers could tell you and look at the roster right now and look at the roster at the same time last year and not say the Pittsburgh Steelers have a better football team. They do. They've upgraded in several positions. They have a better roster. Now, the question, does that make them Super Bowl favorites or anything crazy? No. Not saying that. But the roster is better, and last year's roster won 10 football games. Let's keep that in mind. It didn't end the way that we all wanted it to, thought it would, but they still won 10 football games, and that was a very, very flawed roster. And I'm not saying that this roster isn't flawed as well. But again, you look at it for player, position by position, there is no doubt that the Pittsburgh Steelers are better. I'm not saying it's leaps and bounds better. I'm not saying that. But to say that they're not any better, you're either just being negative about it or you don't pay attention. Either one is fine. But if you're being honest, you know that the Pittsburgh Steelers are better. Don't listen to the national media and what they're trying to tell you, about how bad the Steelers are. This roster is better than the one last year. Does it still need to perform? Absolutely. 100%. But it doesn't mean that it's not better. It just doesn't mean that. And that's my whole thing. Look, they added veterans to this to be all in. They added veterans at key positions to be all in for this season. That's the whole thing. It's for this season. And I don't think that when you add those type of veterans that you're actually looking past this season. A 41-year-old quarterback, that's not the future. It isn't. You bring in a Jalen Ramsey. You would want Jalen Ramsey to be here for the next 2 to 3 years, but you're not expecting Jalen Ramsey to be here for the next decade. Darius Slay, that's a 1-year guy. He signed a 1-year contract. He's not the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he is still a good player. Jalen Ramsey is a very good player. Aaron Rodgers, good football player. They're bringing these older veterans in because they're saying, hey, we're all in for this year. We're trying to win. Now, I know a lot of people think, well, if you're not trying to win the Super Bowl, you're not trying. I'll be okay with that. I can live with that. But the Steelers are in this thing to win. But the one thing that they didn't is they did not sacrifice their future. And I've been preaching that for the last month. Go all in. Be as good as you possibly can. And this was before the Steelers made any of the trades, before Aaron Rodgers even officially signed with the Steelers. I was screaming, just go all in on the season, but just don't sacrifice your future. Well, the Steelers have done that. They didn't give away any mid to early round draft picks other than the DK Metcalf signing, which again, DK Metcalf, 27 years old, you expect him to be around for a little while. So they didn't give up any of those things, when they brought in Jonnu Smith. That's a late round pick swap in 2027. No draft picks were given up, to bring in these guys. So, and again, the Steelers' future can be very bright. You still have to pick the right players. You still have to play well, but they didn't sacrifice that. 12 picks going into next year's draft. They still have those, Do they have the opportunity to swindle and wheel and deal and do all the things? Yes, they still have that opportunity. So I like the fact that they are all in on this season. They didn't sacrifice their future, and they picked up good football players at positions that are going to help the Steelers. Look, there's a ton of people out there that don't agree with the Jonnu Smith. They're bringing him in. I say, why not? You're foolish if you believe that is the wide receiver 2. I don't believe he's a wide receiver 2, but I do know Arthur Smith's offense doesn't really call that often for a wide receiver 2. It's a luxury. It'd be nice to have, I think the Steelers, for them to really, really compete, they have to have one, but it's not 100% of a requirement for this offense to move the football. It just isn't that. We saw it last year. They were still able to move the football from time to time. Let's not get carried away, Big B. It's not like the Steelers were blowing the doors off of people, just racking up the yards and racking up the points. They weren't. They absolutely were not. But Jonnu Smith helps that. He helps it. Again, whether you're catching the ball from wide receiver two, a tight end, slot, wherever you're lined up, if you can move the chains, move the chains. And that's what he's going to bring to to the table here. A lot of people say, well, he hadn't had a great season. He only had that one in Miami. He doesn't have to be great. Like everybody, and I've been stressing this basically the last week. Every player on your football team doesn't have to be great. That is not Super Bowl champions. Everybody isn't great that steps onto the field for them. You know, the Eagles, everybody wasn't great. You just need people doing their jobs. Some are going to do their jobs at a high level. Some are going to be great, but everybody isn't. And that's okay. So Jonnu Smith doesn't have to be great. He just has to do what's asked of him at a high level. Great. Let's make it work. Again, it's an added weapon that the Steelers needed. And we love Darnell Washington. He's an upgrade as a pass catcher, not as a blocker. Hell no, not as a blocker. But as a pass catcher, he's an upgrade. I like the move. So the Steelers are better. Mika wasn't in the Pittsburgh Steelers' future. Let's just get to that right now. I love Mika Fitzpatrick. I've been stressing for 2 years that they were paying him too much and not asking him to do enough. I don't even believe that that Mika can't do the things that he used to do. I'm still under the impression that he can do that. But the Steelers weren't asking him to. Part of the reason is they didn't trust the corners. They did not trust the corners. So you needed that last line of defense. If you upgrade the corners, you can still have somebody back there doing what Mika's doing, or have them moving around doing a little bit more, but you're not paying that guy $18.5 million to be the last line of defense. That is where the difference is that, okay, we have better corners. Now you don't have to pay a safety to be back there to do those things. You don't have to pay him that kind of money. You shouldn't be paying him that kind of money. And that's my whole thing, is that I like Minka. I thought he was great. I still think he's got stuff left in the tank. But as we'll talk about later, a corner, especially a top 10 corner, is better than a top flight safety. It's just period, end of story. But like I mentioned, we will talk about that a little later. So, but Minka also wasn't going to be in the plans for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's another thing, is that he was going to count $24 million against the cap next year, and that was the last year on his contract. There is no way in hell that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to pay him that. They weren't going to take that hit. So they traded him this year. Again, a year early versus a year late. Because even if Minka, look, you think the Steelers were going to extend him and pay him more money? They weren't going to do that. Minka Fitzpatrick was getting traded next year. So why not trade him this year, upgrade at corner, and move on? It was the smart move. It's not always the popular thing to do, but it was the smart move. Pittsburgh Steelers are all in for 2025, ladies and gentlemen. They just are. They made the move. It's outside the norm. Some of the things that they did, I think that's part of what Steeler fans, we just can't believe it. We're shell-shocked right now that we did so many things that are outside the norm that other teams have done, but we just haven't done. And now we're trying to get used to it on the fly, and it's difficult. It's difficult for me, but we'll figure it out. And to be honest with you, it's what was best for the Steelers for this particular season. And again, it's what's best for this season without sacrificing anything in seasons to come. That's what I love about this, man. Let's go to the poll question. So, poll number one: what do you think about the Steelers' decision to part ways with Minka Fitzpatrick? A, smart move, frees up cap space for future signings. B, risky decision. We should have kept him. C, unsure. Need to see how the roster shakes out. Or D, I trust Omar Khan. They know what they are doing. Make sure you put a 1 in front of the number, or in front of the letter, excuse me, so we know exactly what poll question you are answering. Let's move on, people.